This is Pete Fletzer. Join us for a conversation with Star Wars impressionist and TikTok sensation Kevin Cabral.
Wait, how did this happen? We're smarter than this? Apparently not.
You're listening to Around the Galaxy. Welcome to episode number 116 of Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk show. I am your host, Pete Fletzer. Thank you so much for joining us. If this is your first time checking out Around the Galaxy, well, thank you so much for being here. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on social media at ATGcast, or you can keep up with us on our website at atgcast.com. If you're a returning visitor, well, thank you so much for being with us once again. As you know, every week I am privileged to bring you a conversation with an author, a celebrity, an actor, or a superfan, and we get to know their Star Wars journey and the impact it's had on their lives. And this week, we are excited to bring you our conversation with a young man who is a TikTok superstar. He is an amazing Star Wars impressionist, and he is also a voiceover actor. His name is Kevin Cabral, and we will get to him in just one moment. Before we do, I just want to take a moment to remind you that you can become a part of the live virtual audience when we record our shows every week by heading on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/ATGcast, or you can find it at atgcast.com. You know, for as little as $3 a month, you will become a patron member, and every level of our Patreon program gets you access to the weekly live stream so that you can be in the live virtual audience when we record our podcast week to week. And you'll even hear on this episode, we've monitored the chat while the show's going, and sometimes that has an influence on where we're going with the conversation. There's other perks, of course, like free merch and meet and greets with some of our guests, but you can find all that information again as part of our Patreon program at patreon.com/ATGcast. So over the summer of 2020, you know, the pandemic summer, a young gentleman named Kevin Cabral made a TikTok video where he did 7 or 8 impressions of Star Wars characters. You can find the link in the show notes. And it became a viral sensation. More than 4.2 million views on this video, 41 seconds, and this kid became a social media superstar. So without further ado, I am excited to bring you our conversation with Kevin Cabral. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing well, Pete. How you doing?
Great. Happy birthday to Star Wars, and happy joining us today. How are you?
I'm feeling really good. It's been a hot second since I've done a podcast, so I'm excited to get back into form.
If it makes you feel any better, you're the youngest guest to ever be on the show. I think the only one who was younger was my daughter when she was 9 years old, and we were just testing the equipment. So, so welcome. You've already set a record here. And so, and I know you're still in college, but tell us a little bit about you and your how you get to doing what you're doing.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm Kevin Cabral. I'm a 19, soon to be 20-year-old, and I go to school at North Carolina State University. I study industrial systems engineering. I minor in Spanish, and I minor in theater. And I just so happened to get really bored one day in the middle of the pandemic, and I made a TikTok, and I started putting out some, funny little skits and that sort of deal. And then I thought, maybe I'll put out some of my impressions that I do. People might like that. And eventually I accumulated a bit of a following, and I had that video, which last year did blow up both on TikTok and on Twitter and everywhere. And I mean, I still see it show up sometimes like new by some random person who posted on YouTube. And I'm kind of like, that's weird. It was definitely weird being a bit of a viral sensation for a day. Cause let's see, it also happened around the same time that somebody that I'm friends with, Julian Bass. I don't know if you if you know of him. He's the guy who got signed on by like Disney and Sony, and he did like the lightsaber flipping animation and some craziness. Yep. With the chair. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy being a little nugget of internet culture, and hopefully it's a signal of bigger things to come.
Now, had you been doing impressions for long before that, or how did you end up? Yeah. What made you decide to? I'm going to put up a TikTok. Well, you had some impressions beforehand, right? Yes. But tell us a little bit about going into that piece of the TikTok world.
That specific video, I think I posted at like 3:00 in the morning because I'd filmed it for like the last hour from like 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Because a lot of the stuff that I do is informed by the way that I've approached theater and that sort of thing. And so in high school, I was the co-president of my improv group, and I'd been in that improv group for 4 years. And so improv is a huge part of what I do. Most of the stuff that I've done has not been scripted, because most of the time when I script something out, it becomes so over processed that I don't find it funny anymore. And that's something that, I mean, there's certain actors with a skill to just be so fresh on every take, every read of a line, that I haven't quite picked that skill up yet. It's something that I wish I had, but that's why I went and just burst of creativity super late at night. And I went into my bathroom and I shot it in the mirror. And I think I probably filmed each take of that thing 10 times. Right. Because some of those impressions, I mean, I've got them somewhere in my muscle memory, but it's accessing that muscle memory that can take a while.
And so you started, when did you start doing, like, did you do impressions when you were, I was gonna say when you were a kid, when you were when you were younger? Is this something you've always done?
I think I've always done voices. Whether or not I've done impressions is a different question. And I think I keep refining my answer to that question, because I don't know that I've ever really done impressions up until I got to maybe my junior or senior year in high school. And I'm now like a college sophomore. I should be a college junior, but I took the last year off. Regardless. Yeah, I always did voices. I remember when I was younger, like before I hit puberty, I did a perfect Bee Gees. Like spot on, right? But then after that, I can't quite do them anymore. And it always came down to, I was doing silly like cartoon voices, because I like to imagine that I was going to be, somebody doing nothing but cartoons, which now that I'm a little older and I understand how voiceover works, I'm like, oh no, that's a special treat that voice actors get.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is commercial stuff. But, I go around and I do like a silly part. I mean, that's not a difficult thing. That's just me pitching my voice up. But so many people are like, oh, that's so cool. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think most people can do a wide range of voices, but impressions is, I'm lucky that it comes natural to me. But impressions, it just involves so much dissection of what it is that the person does. And I think in my video, you might see, like, for Palpatine, I got to get all like physical in my face for that, and like my face gets all contorted and I have to scrunch up my shoulders. But it's more than just what you say and how you say it. It also has to come down to like where your mind's at, how you're contorting your body and moving your muscles, and it's a fun little exercise, I think.
Do you do impressions outside of Star Wars?
A couple.
One of them is Kermit the Frog. Everyone loves a good Kermit the Frog. If Kermit was in Star Wars, I think he would play an interesting Luke Skywalker. Oh, you're my dad? Oh.
I used to do a President Barack Obama. I tend not to do those anymore. So Barack Obama, Mace Windu are impressions that I did do at one point. Like even Lando, I try not to do anymore. And a lot of that comes down to the social discussions right now about identity and how you as an actor should or shouldn't do certain characters. And I think that, I had somebody approach me for a fan project that wanted me to do a Lando. And I was like, I appreciate that you found me and that I can do the voice. But I think especially for instances where you're looking to get paid, I think it's best like, yeah, I can do the voice, but there's definitely other people who identify with those identities who can do the voice too. And you find them and they'll do just as good of a voice.
Let's talk a little bit about your Star Wars journey. When did you discover Star Wars? How old were you? What are some of your earliest Star Wars memories?
Goodness gracious. I mean, I was like a kid, a very small kid. And my mother, my single mother, I love her to death. She introduced me to Star Wars because she was getting tired of me watching the straight to VHS Buzz Lightyear of Star Command movie. I don't know if you know of it, but it was a straight to VHS spinoff of Toy Story. And I would watch that thing incessantly. And she kind of got tired of it and said, okay, I'm going to introduce you to something that I watched when I was younger. And she popped in her VHS copy of A New Hope, and I was hooked instantly. And I watched the whole original trilogy. The sequel trilogy wasn't a thing quite yet. And I think reluctantly, She somehow got the prequel trilogy for me. She's not a big fan, which I'm okay, whatever. But I saw the prequel trilogy, and I think my fandom within Star Wars has only increased as I got older. And I think I started really becoming a massive fan in high school when it was something that I was able to just identify with for no particular reason. I mean, I don't see myself in like any of the characters in a big way. I don't feel like Star Wars understands me any more than anything else did, but it was always there. And that was a really important thing to me. I'm a foreign service kid. So my mom was a diplomat and we moved around a bunch. And so I had to learn to let go of the things that I feared to lose, right? My friends and that sort of thing. But I knew that Star Wars in some way, shape, or form was always going to be there. I could always sit down and watch Empire, which is my favorite movie, when I was just feeling like there wasn't, anything else around for me to be there to support me. And even today, it's like sometimes I'll just throw on a movie when I'm, just feeling a little off. Even though I now am more socially smart, emotionally intelligent, and I have plenty of different friend groups to fall back on, but and graciously I can share my love of Star Wars with a lot of people that I know who also, share in that same enjoyment. So.
This is Jason Fry. You're listening to Around the Galaxy.
Did you find when you went off to college? Because so it's interesting. A lot of the people that, like, for example, my friend Scotty Jeru, who I think is with us in the chat right now, he's a prequel baby. He's he grew up with that, but there's these different entry points to Star Wars. So your entry point was actually the prequels or the original trilogy?
My entry point was the original trilogy, but I would say too, like that was at a point where I was like, oh, cool, they got like lightsabers and that sort of thing, and they're fighting, and like so I didn't appreciate it on the level that I can now about like the themes and such things. And so between watching the OT and probably like the span of a couple weeks, and then maybe a year later watching the prequels when my mom finally caved in and like let me get the VHS of them, it's all kind of a blur, right? So I would say though that I appreciate the OT and the prequels pretty much in the same light. But because the sequel, like there was such a span between when I'd been introduced to like all the Star Wars that kind of had been out by the time I was around, and then the sequel trilogy, I actually got to experience in the theaters. Same with Rogue One and Solo. Yeah. And so they occupy different spaces in my mind. Interestingly enough. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's so interesting too, because it is, I love all Star Wars because I spend many more hours than I probably should talking about it. But I do compartmentalize. I put Clone Wars and Bad Batch over on one side. It's still part of the story, but it's a different type of Star Wars. And it's also different types of fans, right? The people who you have a conversation with. If I'm going to dive deep and talk about, where did Omega come from? I'm probably not having that conversation with my dad, who loves all science fiction and horror stuff, but we'll talk Star Wars and Mando. So it is interesting that you say that as well. If somebody who's been, there's not been a time when there hasn't been Star Wars in your life.
Yeah. Nor will there probably ever be.
Yes. Yeah, that was a very depressing notion I had one day. It was like, I'm probably not going to live to see all the Star Wars at this point. And it's a very, well, that got dark pretty quick. But are you a Star Wars fan that catches everything on Friday mornings when it hits Disney Plus, or are you?
Yeah, generally, if I'm not staying up until 3:00 in the morning with my friends watching it over Discord, I watch it shortly thereafter when I wake up. Sometimes my girlfriend and I will watch it together, but oftentimes it's me, her, and like the rest of my like 4 or 5 friends that watch Star Wars just kind of hopping on Discord at 3 a.m. my time. Some of them live out in LA, it's like, so for some of them it's more convenient, but I do watch it all. But, one of the things that I am not is a collector. I know so many people who are like right there when stuff drops, and I just haven't done any of that. I mean, my best friend Mike has been my best friend for a long time. I'm trying to struggle. He made me this wonderful wood print of Mando, and that's behind me. And he also made that's very difficult to see, but that was my old Funk Lord Vader logo that wasn't maybe super copyrightable or anything. So I've got my own little special bits of merch and things like collect, I guess, but not figures or anything.
Is it a generational thing? Do your friends collect that are Star Wars fans, or
No? I mean, I have a friend who collects Funko Pop type things, but I don't know. That's not exclusive to Star Wars. I think maybe it's just the people I'm around. Frankly, I think that the collecting is still probably a thing, but I mean, I don't know many people my age who have a ton of dispensable income to put towards collector's items, especially those that are like considered a lot older and more valuable. You know, like, I mean, you can drop however much money on a new Black Series, but if you want to get some of the older stuff, the price is just
it goes up. It definitely goes up. And it's funny because, well, I mean, obviously I have a problem with Black Series helmets behind me, but I think a lot of it has to do with where you started your Star Wars journey, what you want to buy. It's funny, Mandalorian for me has pulled me in, and that's like, I collect Mando stuff and Empire Strikes Back stuff. Like, that's kind of my two areas. And every helmet that Black Series puts out, for some reason, that's been my thing. But I think that's because when I was 7 and I saw the Stormtroopers, I always wanted a full Stormtrooper outfit, never did it. So it's just sort of some sort of issue.
Honestly, I keep telling my friends who do cosplay, if there was anything that I was going to do and invest a significant amount of money in, it would be making my own bounty hunter cosplay from Star Wars. Yeah. Like a new one. Like, I do everything from concept design to the final prints and finishes and everything. Because there's a great community out there. Like the 501st does all the 501st stuff, and you've got Mando communities that have all different kinds of STL files that you can print your own Mando stuff. Yep. But I just want to be different, I want to get like my own bounty hunter thing, and then I'll make a whole voice for it, right? Because that's what I do, and that's who I am. Right. But yeah. I mean, one day, maybe I'll have my own bounty hunter cosplay one day. That
would be awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your voices and your TikTok situation. So, as I said before, I knew I was like a little bit out of my element when I was I'm not a TikTok guy. Is that like where your primary focus is? And I'm probably going to edit that out of the audio version, because that sounds I'm hearing it in my ears and thinking, God, I sound old. But I mean, were you all like, did you go to TikTok as an opportunity to promote your voices, or were you just playing around and it just sort of became what you did and what you became known for? How did that work for you?
A good business person would probably go to TikTok nowadays with the idea that they would be promoting themselves. And eventually I did have that mentality, which is largely why I don't do much TikToking anymore. But I started because I was bored and realized that there were opportunities for me to reach an audience and maybe get my name out there a little bit. And it worked. After that video, I had a lot of different people reach out to me, and I have a bunch of connections in Star Wars now, and that's really exciting. But for the most part, TikTok as a platform is not something that I'm intimately involved with anymore. And even when I was kind of at the peak of my popularity, when I was still putting out content fairly regularly, it was still me trying to have the most fun I could. Right. And I think that largely with the more people that follow you, like, look, your 15 seconds a day of internet fame is a really cool thing, because it's great for people that you knew in high school to come up to you and be like, dude, I saw you on the internet the other day. What the heck? Like, that's crazy. Glad to see you're doing okay. And that's all well and good. But then honestly, there's a tremendous amount of pressures around just having any sort of social media presence, especially when people start throwing around the words influencer and that sort of thing. Right. That makes me really uncomfortable, because like, at the end of the day, my end goal is to be in a Star Wars project in a formidable capacity and have my names in the credits, right? And like, I want to do voice acting. Like, that's the idea. But I do not need this giant pressure of like, my children are watching you and you need to, because it's just, it's you're doing two things at once. You're the social media person and you're the voice actor. And I think for the most part, while it's fun to engage with people who also love Star Wars and are fans of what you're doing, it's a lot of pressure, especially when the negativity comes in, because there can be quite a bit of it. I remember when I put out that video, it opens with Obi-Wan, and most people's criticisms were, hey, that Obi-Wan's kind of lacking. And it's a fair criticism, right? It's not super
Sure.
substantive, but like, sure, okay. And I'm somebody who understands how to take criticism and when to take it and from whom, and et cetera, et cetera. So that didn't hurt me much. But, you take somebody who's maybe younger than me, or, perhaps isn't quite acclimated to this idea of taking criticism. Like I love public speaking. So those concepts are not foreign to me. But if you take somebody who's just feels comfortable making a TikTok, but isn't comfortable getting in front of the class, the moment criticism hits the page, like that could be a huge negative impact on their psyche. And it even started to affect me. Like, that's why I stopped doing stuff back in September, because I thought, I'm going to focus on professionally developing my own voiceover stuff and applying to summer internships. Actually, slightly tangential. And this is the first time anybody who follows me is hearing about this, but I have an internship at NASA this summer. It's my second internship at NASA thus far.
That's fantastic. That's
yeah,
great.
Very excited. But, and so it's balancing this whole idea of, well, I'm going to college as an engineer and I'm going to see that through. Despite the fact that there's been plenty of opportunities presented to me in the realm of voice acting, because I don't know, you just can't beat it for your education. I don't know. But also I have an enormous passion for this voice acting thing, and I've got a knack for it, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And I've got people that support me, and I've got, different people willing to give me grants for equipment and that sort of thing. I have ecosystems and infrastructures on both sides that are really conducive to just me doing other thing that I want to do. And I think TikTok at the end of the day was too much of a time draw, too much of at times a downer, honestly, that just made it difficult for me to do the other stuff that I want to do in life.
Yeah.
But
well, it's interesting because it seems like did you consider a voice acting / voiceover career before you found the TikTok fame? Or you did? Okay.
Yeah, I think for the most part, TikTok legitimizes what I was thinking before. Okay. I had trained under Melissa Liebart. She's an Emmy award-winning voice actress, and I've kind of been introduced to that kind of thing because, like, I knew how to do the voicings. I'd already been listening to like compilations for years of like radio voicing, right? I mean, like, what does that sound like? What does your average ad on the YouTube's spotlight before a video sound like? I had a feel for it, but to actually train under somebody who was in the business and understood was a different ball game, and that was like not last summer but the summer before. And so I'd already been kind of allowed to have my foot in the door, and TikTok and having those impressions kind of blow up on a social platform legitimized the fact that I was like, oh, okay, so I could do this. People do think that I'm okay at these whole voices and all that stuff. So maybe, just maybe, there is a chance that I'm going to be recognized at some point, and maybe there's a chance that I'll be picked up by somebody. And I mean, certainly I remember putting out certain videos on my Twitter, which is actually where most of like the celebrities, the people who actually do the voices professionally for Lucasfilm. I mean, Mark Hamill liked 2 of my tweets, and that was something special, man. I got to tell you, I did a Mark Hamill voices compilation where I did, Luke, of course, but also the Joker and characters that he did in various other projects like Avatar: The Last Airbender and so on. I did one for James Arnold Taylor's voices. He does Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars, and he does Johnny Test, among other voices, and Freddie Prinze Jr., Sam Witwer liked my Maul impression. I mean, it's just so fun to interact with people in that way because, it's really, I use the word already, but it's an affirmatory thing. It's like the person who is that, they are that voice, right?
Right.
And they looked at your voice and they're like, not bad, kid. Right?
I love James Arnold Taylor's comment to you where he said, I can go on vacation now. And
if only there were somewhere to travel to.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So which, I mean, now, if you got a vaccine, go get your vaccine.
Go for it. Go vax.
This is Eric Walker, and you're listening to Around the Galaxy with Pete Fletzer.
So what's your favorite Star Wars impression to do?
Oof. It changes, but I think for the longest time I've really enjoyed doing both Anakin and Obi-Wan from the prequel era in tandem, because they just have they have the best chemistry, honestly. Between the Clone Wars series fleshing out the relationship and the dynamic that they have in the prequel movie trilogy, it's just so fun to do silly situations that they're both in, because they're different but similar in some ways. And Anakin is actually one of the easiest impressions, in my opinion, to do. I really don't have to do much to my own voice to change it. I start here, and then I just kind of lighten things a little bit, and like we're almost there. Like I'm just speaking from like more like the back of my throat. Everything's just kind of coming out instead of me kind of being more cemented. And so we're talking like this, and then you add a little bit more punctuation. And he's got this weird thing where he almost sounds Canadian at times, and like it's a little strange. Wait, is he actually Canadian? He might be. I don't know that I've ever looked that up. No, that's
yes. Hayden Christensen is Canadian, so that it makes sense.
All right, well there you go.
Thank you for coming on the show. You've learned something from me now. It's rare when most of my guests walk away going, "What did I get out of that 45 minutes?" But you now have learned.
I know.
Yeah, well, yes, he definitely has that Canadian.
Yeah.
That's
I
so
mean,
funny.
but that like, and that's where it is. That's all I have to do. And like for other voices, I mean, it's considerably more involved, and I have to sit there and I have to do like. There's probably an actual name for this in the industry, but a lot of people, when they're doing voice, they do a specific primer or line that gets them into the thing. Like, you know, if I'm doing an Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Clone Wars, Anakin, the Council, you know, something like that. And they say a line that like gets them in there. But I have to do that like several times. I've been working on, and I know this is something we were going to talk about at some point, but I've been working on D. Bradley Baker clone impression, because I've had my Tamora Morrison, Jango Fett, Boba Fett clone, you know, Republic Commando down for a long time, but D. Bradley Baker's is like, for some reason, really difficult for me. So it's not there yet, but right. I sit there and I'm like, the name's Rex, but you can call me Captain or Sir. The name's Rex, but you can call me Captain or Sir. And I'm like, no, I can't hear myself. So I take off my headphones and I go, the name's Rex, but you can call me Captain or Sir. And I'm like, it's not there yet. I'm like, it's not there. There's something about the tonality, the pitch that I just like, it's lost on me. And then I have to sit there for another 5 minutes. But, you know, when I'm crafting an impression like I am right now with the clones, it's a lot of sitting down, watching, you know, top 10 Captain Rex moments on YouTube,
right.
like over and over again, and just repeating the lines back to D. Bradley Baker on the other side of the screen.
Yep. And
until I'm like, yeah, I can't tell an appreciable difference, that I also know that the audience would, because I've listened to my own voice for so long, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I know now that I've kind of done the TikTok thing that there's a certain amount that people just don't notice or don't care,
right?
When it comes down to how perfect your impression is. For myself, I want it to be as close as possible, but you know, sometimes it's like, yeah, that little thing he does with like the attack on his T's, like, you know, no one's gonna notice that. No one except for. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, do you find that the impression is less sound and more inflection, or I guess maybe it depends on the character?
It does depend on the character.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like Han Solo, that's a tough one. It's actually a lot harder than a lot of the other ones, and that's why I don't do it too often. Han Solo is really interesting because, I mean, Harrison Ford has such a manner about him, and that informs the way that he says things. He's like, you know, he's kind of like relaxed and a little sleazy, but also he can really dig into you. And so there's a weird contrast there that you have to find a middle ground between, you know, but also his actual voice, like the sound of it, is massively different than mine. He's a lot, you know, further down here. But like, if I go too far, then I just sound like Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption. You know, it's like, you know, there's a weird middle ground. And for myself, where I hear everyone's voice as its own thing, and I can draw connections between your voice and somebody else's voice, and like blah, blah, blah. It's so easy for me to be in the middle of an impression and be like, well, now I slipped into somebody else.
Yeah.
But the person across the room from me is like, what do you mean? No, you didn't. You're doing the same one. And so part of doing the impressions is just get past that mental block and cement yourself in the space where you're like, you're on the impression. You just gotta keep doing it until you're done with the line or the whatever it is. That's one of those weird challenges that I'm like, gosh, like if I could just explain this to you in a way that made sense, maybe, but
I mean, it does make sense. I mean, it's an art form. It's no different than me trying to explain, what it's like when I buy a new bass guitar and I tell my wife that it sounds different, it's got a different tone. She's like, no, it doesn't. They all sound the same. They're all there. I know you love doing Obi-Wan and Anakin, so I'm going to throw you a softball. If Anakin and Obi-Wan suddenly found themselves on a podcast like this, how might they handle that moment?
Wait, how did this happen? We're smarter than this. Apparently not. I joke, of course. But,
no, I love the way you could just jump right in. And I have watched your TikToks where you're like in the car with Anakin and Obi-Wan, and it's that. And I think that's what makes that impression so good is the fact that it's that relationship, it's that personality, it's the go between there.
Yeah. Well, I might touch on that for a minute because one of those things that I think a lot of people don't really realize is, one part of it is the impression and is being able to do the voice, but the other is like, well, okay, yeah, what are you going to say?
Right.
Like, why do people want to stick around and actually watch? There's some dude right now and probably a team, frankly, of incredibly talented people who are doing a Tom Cruise deepfake account on. Are you familiar with deepfakes? The idea of superimposing somebody's facial structure on your own using computer AI modeling.
Yeah, I saw who was it? It was I think it was I can't remember. It was some comedian who does is Bill Hader who does the really good Pacino, and then they put Pacino's face over Bill Hader, and it's disturbingly
sweet potato. Yeah. It's crazy stuff, but I mean, not only do you have the incredible, the really, really knowledgeable, incredible team of, CG artists who are doing the facial superposition and all that. But also you've got the actor who's not only doing the vocal impression, which is one thing, but he has to, get the facial expression correct too for the AI to properly, make the face look convincing. And he does the whole physical acting thing that, the stuff that Tom Cruise, I don't do with Tom Cruise, so like whatever, but like that weird frustration that Tom Cruise always seems to have, like that, just like, I'm always on the edge. I'm on the edge of something. I'm doing a thing, and like that guy's like pulling so much weight there, but that's all well and good, except for the fact that you have to put him in an interesting situation that's going to make people actually stay and watch this whole viewer retention thing. And it's like, that's the whole part of it that, a lot of people don't appreciate. And so for me, this idea of just improving my stuff, and I'm like, I'll just do a take. And if I don't like that take, scrub it and do kind of the same thing. Maybe I switch up the line, but I just build my scene out, and it helps it feel natural. So like that one I did of Anakin and Obi-Wan in the car, and I think Anakin ran over some younglings or something unfortunate like that. That was like, last summer I was out shopping with my mom, and my mom was like, all right, you can stay in the car if you want. I'm going to hop in a Bell's outlet or something real quick. And I sat there in the car and I was like, all right, I have nothing better to do. I'm going to film a TikTok. And you just build out that scene from square one. And like in the middle of it, I was like, he's going to run over some younglings. Get it? Because Anakin doesn't like younglings because he killed them. Right. And it's like, okay, sure. And I don't know where I'm really going with this ranty segue, but it's not just the impressions. That always has to come down to making sure that people are actually entertained by the content of what you're.
Right. So how did that's a great segue to a question. How did you end up with the decision to do I love it when you call me señorita. Like, what was the decision that I'm going to take 7 Star Wars characters and pull this line from a song and just do it? Like, what inspires that?
So actually I can point you directly to another, very, very well-established voice actor now. He's very popular both on Instagram and on TikTok and probably other venues. His name is Lucas T. Arnold, and he had been doing that for a while with various characters. I mean, he would just kind of compile different notable voice impressions from all over the place. He does a John Mulaney. I do a John Mulaney, and I'm sad because at some point I had filmed a video and I was planning to put it out, and then he put out his first John Mulaney video. I was like, all right, he's the king of that now. I can't do that without, looking like I ripped him off. But he was doing I Love It When You Call Me Senorita as a format. And, I feel bad about taking things directly from people. So what I tried to do, instead of just saying, I love it when you call me Senorita in the voice of a character, I tried to ad lib around it or in it or through it or whatever. And so, for like Tarkin, right? You will soon find that I far prefer the term senorita, like whatever, right? I mean, you switch up the actual format. And he then, I think at some point adopted that as well after we'd had an exchange over, messaging and that kind of thing. But it was one creator being inspired by another thing that, at the same time, a very similarly sized creator was doing. And, there's a lot of those feedback loops, especially on TikTok, where a lot of the idea is, instead of retweeting something and maybe adding a line or a pun that makes the below tweet funnier, you do a duet wherein you've got one person on one column and another person on another. And sometimes it'll be a thing like somebody reaches out of frame and the next TikTok over imposes their hand in the frame, like grabs a soda can or something, and funny little iterations like that. But definitely there's an ecosystem of Star Wars creators within TikTok that I was a part of for a long time, that we all just kind of shared the same, oh, hey, there's this thing going around. If you want to make a video and it'll probably blow up, do this. I think it was everybody kind of watching out for each other, which was interesting considering that tends not to happen. I mean,
it seems like it would be
competition.
I was going to say, it sounds like to me like that would be a pretty competitive space.
And it is, but I think what was really interesting was you were seeing a little bit of a kind of recycling of who was popular on the platform at the time that I was coming in. I can't speak to now because I'm really not on the platform anymore, but like the Star Wars creators either didn't exist or were just gone. And like nowadays I'm gone. Right. But there was this giant vacancy for Star Wars content. And so a lot of us had started at the beginning of the pandemic and we were all like, hey man, I got like 10, 20,000 more followers than you. Let me like highlight you in my video. Let's do a duet. Let's do a funny skit together. And it was just a lot of that back and forth between like tens of creators. I've got a friend who I'd love to meet at Star Wars Celebration one day. His handle is Mace AH Windu. And he blew up one day because of some pirate cosplay he did, but he's at like 600,000 followers now. And he was just doing Star Wars content for the longest time. And he and I had done a couple of things together, but it's just like, there was this kind of mutual understanding of like, I'm going to help you out and you're going to help me out. And we're just all going to try to climb this ladder together because, I do one thing, right? Realistically, people came and subscribed to my account for impressions. Right. And when I did anything that wasn't impressions, it wasn't received as well, because that's not what they were there for. Right. And so, that's as much as that's like an empowering thing, knowing what your audience is going to respond to, it's also really limiting.
This is Scott Chernoff, and you're listening to Around the Galaxy with Pete.
I mean, if you had the one that video, I mean, that blew up at 4.2 million, and I imagine the pressure to try to continue to do that must have been a challenge as well.
It was, and I remember that after that video came out, it was just I just posted incessantly, trying to do more of the same stuff. And that's, in retrospect, I look back and I'm like, yeah, of course that wasn't going to work again. Like the algorithm favored you on that day at that time for some unknown reason. But, I sat there and I'd accumulated so many people from that one impression. I think I was at like, I don't remember quite specifically, but it was in the 20 to 30,000 probably followers range. And after that, I was like 100,000 and something. And I was like, oh, now I have this many more people that just want to see Star Wars stuff, but I do like voices in general. So I had planned out I was going to do Harry Potter impressions. I was going to do Lord of the Ring impressions. I was going to do Avatar: The Last Airbender, Korra, and I had all this stuff planned. And I was like, this isn't how I do things. Like, I mean, it would make sense for plenty of people to do it that way, but I'm like, this is I just wing stuff. I just do stuff when it comes to my mind. I'm like sitting at my computer writing an essay. I'm like, oh, that'd be a good TikTok. I'm like, that's what I spend my break, doing. I take a 30-minute break and I make a TikTok, and then I go back to work. I don't sit. It's not a business for me, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that was what was really ultimately, honestly, that video was great to have my 15 seconds of fame, but it ultimately led to me not being on the platform because it was so restricting in terms of like, yeah, Kevin Cabral, the Star Wars impressions guy. And I trust me when I say, like, when I come on shows like this, I love to be that because I get that, like, you'll understand the nuance. The audience will understand the nuance of it. But when you're on TikTok and you're just scrolling, I mean, you've seen 100 videos already in that session and you get to me, it's the Star Wars impressions guy, which is fine as long as I am in Star Wars one day. But
if it works to your advantage, that makes a lot of sense. It definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, since you're the Star Wars impressions guy, I'm going to ask you to do a couple things. We got a couple of interesting requests here. Let's see. Do you do Indiana Jones?
Ooh, Indy. I've never done Indy explicitly before, right? I mean, I've done a Han. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I was considering doing Indy. It's not the years, it's the mile. Yeah. See, that's difficult because I'm still like, it is. And I haven't done my Han in a while. So regrettably, I probably couldn't do an Indiana Jones any kind of justice, but that would be an interesting one I would explore. So there, Raiders is like, I love Empire. It's my favorite movie, but like Raiders is close by. You're on the right track.
So we have, how about JD Sleesman? He's one of our patrons, a great guy as well. He wants to hear some Joker. What do you got?
Oh, some Joker. Okay. All right.
Now, I know this one requires the physical piece because I saw your video.
Physical, yeah. and also, well, the question too is like, which Joker, right? Because there's the Mark Hamill Joker. There's the Cameron Monaghan Cal Joker. There's the Joker from the Nolan films. Yeah. There's so many different Jokers. Goodness, I know I did a Mark Hamill Joker at one point, and I'm trying to like find that in my brain right now.
Oh, Batman. Oh, I need a line to say because I don't have anything to say on the spot right now. But if you had any ideas, please let me know.
Now, you also do you do the other? That's really great. Do you do the other Jokers as well?
No, frankly. I felt like putting that out there just to be like, oh, well, man.
Perhaps I could, but no, I don't do those.
Regrettably.
What about some Luke Skywalker?
Oh, Luke is, and he has such a good progression in the original trilogy. I remember sitting there thinking, like, after the Mando spoilers, I guess. Yeah. After the finale of Mando season 2 came out, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to see more of this Luke with mighty Jabba. I'm sure you'll love these 2 droids to be your personal assistants. I mean, he almost like when he's negotiating with Jabba, he sounds like he could be like analogous to Siri. You know what I mean? Like he's right up there with like, oh, I need, young Mark Hamill as my AI voice assistant. But I was going to go to Tashi Station and pick up some power converters, but it's a whole nother year. There's the whiny of episode 4. Right. There's the, oh no, I'm hitting my hero's journey puberty in episode 5. Right. And then there's the, he's a Jedi in episode 6, I am a Jedi like my father before me. I can't leave you here. I've got to save you. You already have, Luke. Tell your sister.
Not a lot of Sebastian Shaw. That was very good. So
I saw Watto.
yeah. Tell me about do you do a Watto?
I do, and I have done. Let's see.
Nubian Republic Graders, they have no liquid around here. Oh, get back to work, Annie.
That's good.
That's a fun one.
That is a fun one. No problem. Why don't you maybe just give us a sort of a rundown of some of your favorite impressions and maybe just kind of give us. You don't have to say Senorita, but if you want to, give us a sort of a playlist.
Let's see. Well, there's Anakin Skywalker, voiced by Hayden Christensen in the prequels. I'm so frustrated, and I'm also young, and Padme's older than me. But wow, I'm really attracted to her, and I don't like sand. And then there's Obi-Wan Kenobi. This one is James Arnold Taylor's Kenobi from the Clone Wars. Oh my, Satine, I would have left the Jedi Order had you but said the word. Then there's Darth Maul Kenobi. He's a tough one, particularly because I always have to like bring my microphone really close to my face, because I mean my voice is up here, and even when Sam Witwer's just talking normally, he's like down here. You know, I'm like Sam Witwer. You know, I am a voice actor in it, and so for him to get to Maul is considerably less effort for me to get to him. That was Maul. We've got Emperor Palpatine. And he's got a bunch of different iterations, so many different voice actors. But
do you have a favorite voice actor for Palpatine?
Honestly, Ian McDiarmid, just standard Palpatine, is probably my favorite. But like the closest second is Sam Witwer, because he did a like knock out of the park job with him.
Yeah.
After sadly the voice actor for Palpatine passed away in the middle of production for the Clone Wars. So I mean, Sam Witwer is like so talented. Like if I could meet, you know, any of the voice actors, you know, who've played a bunch of different characters, Sam Witwer is like easily up there. Let's see. So that was Palpatine. Oh, Mr. Jar Jar Binks, Mr. Yohama, Mr. on the Around the Galaxy Fan Talk Show. Repeat. Hi, Pete. You know, honestly, now as I get older, I actually appreciate Jar Jar more.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you know, because as a kid, I'm sure I found him plenty entertaining, but I understand that the general reaction to him was not positive when the prequels were coming out.
Scotty J-Ro hanging out in the chat. He's a big Jar Jar fan. And
oh heck yeah, yeah, man. Ahmed Best is the best. Let's see. So that was Jar Jar. I did a Luke, you know, but I'll do more Luke. It's okay. Luke is actually really similar to Anakin in a lot of ways. I'm going to be honest. So, you know, Luke is just maybe more refined. Mighty Jabba, blah, blah, blah. When Mando has, it's so funny. I'm sure you've seen the memes floating around, but you know, when Mando sees Luke for the first time, he's like, "Are you a Jedi?" And Luke's just like, No, I'm not a Jedi. I'm just some dude in here with a laser sword. Whatever. Anyway, it just always makes me laugh. I do a Mando, usually with post-processing because of the bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Weapons are part of my religion. Why are you using your hand to do the thing with your hand? And I think what's really interesting about his is for a while on TikTok, I wasn't using post-processing. So I was like straining my voice so much to make it sound like I was in the helmet without having anything over my head, which was really fascinating because that's all we hear him. Like we don't hear him much without his helmet off. And so there's really not a lot of content to derive a voice out from. And so
when his helmet is off,
he's
just kind of quiet. He's just kind of staring.
Yeah. And so I just by default, my voice was like, all right, I guess we got to do that sound. And so that's what I try to put out. It was fascinating. A Jabba off. Oh, do you do a Jabba?
I was in a, there was these guys, the Blue Milk Company. You have to, Blue Bantha Milk Company. They do, they do scripts that are AI generated, and then they do table reads of them, and they're hilarious. And they pulled me into Jabba, and my Jabba is no good. I just I happen to have inherited the Jabba role for one of their shows. But yeah, my Jabba is not that good. Your Jabba is good though. I heard
it's it's okay for somebody who weighs like 2.5 pounds. Did you want Chico? It's just it's so hard for me to get down to those lower ranges, right? So I'm like, I have a triple chin,
That's the thing about the Jabba is it's down there somewhere because there's like there's also a lot more processing on his voice than people realize. I think,
for sure. I don't actually know the original person who did the Jabba voice lines, but I have to imagine they don't sound anything like that.
Probably not. I hope not.
Hey, this is Luthien from Girls with Sabers, and you're listening to Around the Galaxy.
All right, well, we have a 10 question segment of the show.
Heck yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll give you those. And so what you answered the question, but I'm going to ask you the question again. Anyway, what is your favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book?
Okay, favorite Star Wars movie, TV show, or book, hands down, has got to be The Empire Strikes. That was me trying to do a Vader. The Empire Strikes Back. Vader's great with post-processing, but again, coming from skinny white dude, not so much. So yeah, Empire Strikes Back. It's such a perfect sequel. And I have nothing else to say about it. It's perfect. And I will stand by that.
What else do you need other than it's perfect? I think this worked. Okay, so name one actor you'd like to see in a Star Wars.
Oh yeah, so he's this relatively unknown actually. His name is Kevin Cabral. I joke. This isn't even really something I've given a lot of thought to. But I think at the end of the day, somebody that I'd like to see in a Star Wars. Well, can I say somebody that's already been in a Star Wars?
Sure.
I want to see more John Boyega. I want to see a lot more John Boyega as Finn. Because there's so much that I feel that like there's so many directions that character can go. And like Daisy Ridley too. Bring her back. The whole cast. I think there's like their stories they have a nice little bow on it, but who's to say you can't wrap up that gift again?
Sure. Right. It's the gift that keeps giving. Right. I like your every kiss begins with Kenobi. I think that's
what that was a fun one.
If you could own any pet or critter from Star Wars as a pet, what would it be?
Generally not a fan of cats, but loath cat. Right? I have to imagine they'd be a little bit different than like Earth cats. I hope so. I'm not a cat person. I'm way more of a dog person. But then again, do I want to have to take care of a pet? I don't know. But I mean, the novelty, like of having that otherworldly pet. I mean, I think that probably.
I think a lot of cats. That's a good call. I mean, they do seem like a little bit aggressive, but
a little bit. But like maybe that's good because you're like walking your cat, right? And like nobody's gonna jump you because you got a loth cat, and it's like,
I love it's good. I love seeing them come to life in the Mando. It was so cool to see that.
Yes, that was really neat.
What is your favorite Star Wars sound effect?
That's difficult because Ben Burtt is a genius and isn't given enough credit. Gosh, favorite sound effect. I think everyone who is a fan of the prequels by default goes with the seismic imploder. But on the Slave One. And then and that's great. It's a great sound effect. But it's gotta be Droideka guns.
Oh wow.
Yeah. They have such just like a signature sound profile to them.
Yeah.
And it's like by the time you get to the prequels, like they have like the sound technology to make everything sound very full. And so it's just it's really nice.
It's funny. I think that I love that because I also one of my favorite sound effects is Padme's blaster because again, just different enough from the pew pew, but certainly unique.
There was something going around on Reddit the other day. Couldn't tell you what subreddit, but it was one of the Star Wars ones, and people were comparing the sounds of the. I'm gonna get like so corrected on this. The DL-19, I think it is the heavy repeating blaster, the kind of machine gun that they have.
Yep.
And they were comparing the sounds from Mando's Stormtroopers with the DL-19 and the Star Wars 2015 Battlefront, which had impeccable, looks and sound design. And they're slightly different. And like people were rationalizing it with like, well, they don't have Tabana gas in, their blasters because the Empire is splintered. And so they don't have the resources. I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah. That floats your, boat, whatever.
Could just be, we used a different wave file, but otherwise,
it's whatever.
Definitely.
We accidentally pitched up the MP3. I don't know what to say.
Can you find the file? I can't find the file. All right. So who's your favorite droid?
Clink. He's new, right? But he's the cutest friggin' thing I think I've ever seen. When he came on screen and he was like, like me and my girlfriend absolutely flipped. We could not believe it. I mean, I need him in my life. Like I don't need anyone else, right?
Yes.
If somebody told me that I would never be able to see another person for the rest of my life, if I got this droid, I would take it. I'd take it because he seems like such a lovely little tubby dude. Little arms and legs.
My comment on him was that he's both the most and least Star Wars robot I've ever seen. He's like, he's kind of sci-fi, right? He's kind of like traditional science fiction-y.
Danger, Will Robinson.
Right. But at the same time, he's so Star Wars.
Yeah.
I love him. And in fact, if you want to win a Gonky and Clink t-shirt, now would be the right time to comment in the live chat with hashtag Gonky. Cool. All right, good. What's your favorite non-Star Wars movie?
My favorite non-Star Wars movie. I think I mentioned it earlier. Raiders is a really top pick for me because, I mean, again, you've got Harrison Ford, you've got George Lucas involved in some capacity, but I know it's a Spielberg film,
right?
And Spielberg's great too. John Williams did the score, which is brilliant. And the story is so just tight and good, and like, guess he's a guy punched up some Nazis. Like, come on, it's brilliant, and I love the film, and it's a great date movie. I would recommend it if anyone planning on going on a date. It's a really good one.
It's a great movie, and it's funny too because like there's a handful, and maybe it's Spielberg, but there's a handful of movies that are over 20 years old that still 100% work, and that's one. And Jurassic Park, I will die on that hill that you could show that movie today and it still works just as well as it did then. So
I mean, part of it's just that charm that they have where it's like they're not franchise stuff yet, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just kind of like we're putting out a movie and it's adventure, it's fun. I mean, E.T. is the same way, and that is also a Spielberg movie, I would say. It is. I mean, it is that same way, I would say, and it is a Spielberg film. but yeah, I mean, they've got such a purity about them. I think that's a big contributing factor to why they're so rewatchable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Next question. We're going to go. You said you don't have a lot of collectibles, but of the collectibles that you have, or let me put it this way. If you could just go and get any collectible, somebody said, here's a blank check, whatever collectible you want, go get it. What would you go with?
Whatever. Okay. So like, what are our bounds here?
Well, let's take like actual in-movie props off the table, right? Like, because if you want like a full size, I mean, you could. That's your thing. But
look, okay. All I'm saying is that, and not that I'm not advocating for anyone doing this, and I don't think it'd be a good idea. But there is currently an ILM prop, a very big ILM prop at the Udvar Hazy Space Museum.
It's true.
It might be an X-wing, and it might not be. But you know, I don't have a car, so having an X-wing would be pretty nice, right? That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying anybody should go take it and deliver it to me in a way that's safe and doesn't hurt anybody. It's not what I'm saying. Right?
But that particular collectible would be a nice one to hang
from
your. It would be
so
your
nice
ceiling.
if I happened to have it and I acquired it through legitimate means. Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because that leads very interestingly into the next question: is if you could own any spaceship or vehicle from the Star Wars universe, would it be an X-wing?
No, probably not.
Okay.
Like that now, because here's the thing, right? They have an X-wing prop, but you know, Corellian ships, they're nice, they're regal. Would I go for the Falcon? Probably not, because it's beat the heck up.
Right.
And that's a bit of an issue because, you know, I might be like more computer savvy than like my mom, and most other people around me. But I mean, it's the Millennium Falcon. I can't do that by myself. So I'd probably need something a little bit more consumer ready.
Sure.
You know, there's no shame in a small cargo transport, but I mean, if I could get away with somehow taking like the Imperial transport from Return of the Jedi that the Rebels end up acquiring.
Oh, yeah,
some interesting means.
The Shuttle Tidarium?
Yeah, Shuttle Tidarium. Shuttle Tidarium. What is your operating number? If I could get something like that and just roll up to college and land right in front of my dorm room with that. I mean, the amount of street cred, like, come on. It's like, because it's sleek and it's imposing and nobody would want to mess with you.
Plus, I mean, it's got some pretty heavy weaponry on it, if I recall.
It's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean,
which I mean, self-defense, please, let's be clear.
Sure, right.
No school. Yeah, no.
I do love that part of Jedi though, where it's this is why the Empire didn't win, because they're like, it's an older code. We were going to let him go. Like, no, you have a Death Star here that we've lost these things before.
Yeah,
this code looks a little funky. We were just going to let it go.
Yeah.
What do you think we should do, Darth?
Yeah, he was like, I will deal with it myself.
Yeah.
I'm endangering the mission. I shouldn't have come.
Beautiful. All right. What's your favorite Star Wars moment?
Favorite Star Wars moment. I was thinking about this last night because I was like, okay, it's probably going to come from Empire, but like, where in Empire? And honestly, everybody likes to be like the I'm your dad or the I love you. Yeah, I know. But for me, it's when Luke is just like hanging, dangling at the bottom of Cloud City, and he's like hopeless, right? He's, really mad at Ben Kenobi because he didn't tell him that Darth Vader was his dad. He feels like he's got nobody, but you know who he does have? His sister. And he's just, hanging there upside down. He's like, Leia. And the camera goes to the cockpit of the Falcon, and Leia's just sitting there like eyes wide open. And, Lando's like, touching the different mechanisms, and Chewie's doing the same thing. And Leia's like, Luke. And then the music swells, and she's like, we have to go back. And the Falcon does that thing over the cloud. And
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is one of my favorite shots in Empire is when the Falcon goes over the cloud or around the cloud and kind of goes back toward the clouds. Oh, it's just, it's beautiful.
But a close second moment, largely because of the music cue, is the very end of Empire, where we get so many different refrains from the little leitmotifs that John Williams sprinkled in throughout the film. And it's, Luke gets his hand and it goes over to the window, and Lando's like, we're going to go find Han. And Chewie's like, and then they leave on the Falcon, and then, arm around your sister. You kind of don't know that yet. Yeah, I mean, the music cue at the end there, John Williams is just an absolute genius, and it makes me cry without fail every single time I watch it.
And the last of the 10 questions is, what is your go-to Star Wars quote? My
go-to Star Wars quote. I've got a bad feeling about this. It's so applicable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and then because otherwise it's anybody who is in a relationship with people that like Star Wars, it's the I love you, I know, right? Yep. Which just gets annoying after a while. I mean, I used to do that, my mom was like, all right, I'm leaving for school, love you, mom. And it's like, I know. It's like, okay, really? Sometimes you like it when I say I love you, sometimes you don't. Like, can we just standardize this?
Mom, it's a Star Wars line. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. But I'm because I'm trying to remember all the ones you do, I'm going to ask you to just say you're listening to Around the Galaxy or something like that, and I'm going to fire some characters that I know you do, and see if you can get your head into
it, man.
Ready? All right, let's start with the easy one. Let's give you Anakin.
You're listening to the Around the Galaxy Fan Talk Show with Pete Fletcher.
Love that one. All right, and Obi-Wan.
You're listening to the Around the Galaxy Fan Talk Show. Thanks for being here.
Excellent. Okay, one that you didn't do before that I love, and I think you do one of the better versions of it, is Kylo Ren.
Oh, that's right, Kylo Ren. Yeah, Adam Driver is very interesting.
I can't do. I've done the only cosplay I can do because A, it's fairly simple, and B, it doesn't require a lot of expenditure to create things that I have no skills to. Is a Kylo Ren costume, and I've been that for Halloween with the kids a couple times. But I can't do the voice, so I don't say anything. I'm silent Kylo. But would Kylo say Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars fan talk?
Absolutely. You're listening to Around the Galaxy, the Star Wars Fan Talk Show.
He just sounds so grumpy.
He is, though. I mean, he's,
All right, I'll ask you to do one more. You're listening to Around the Galaxy, but you got to throw you may fire when ready at the end, because I want to hear Tarkin.
You're listening to the Around the Galaxy Fan Talk Show, and you may fire when ready.
Kevin, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
This was great, man. I thank you for having me on the show, and it's always so fun to share my Star Wars story with you, so appreciate it.
Awesome. Kevin, we will talk to you again soon.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode of Around the Galaxy. Thanks to our guests, and thank you for listening. If you had fun, please like, subscribe, share, rate, and review it. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at ATGcast or visit our website, atgcast.com. And if you really had fun and would like to be part of the live virtual audience, please feel free to become a part of our Patreon group at patreon.com/ATGcast. Our music is brought to us by the band Silver Colored Knob, who can be found on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find music. Around the Galaxy is copyright 2021, Pete in the Seat Studios.